Hello and welcome to Maritime Mondays. My name is Sascha and I'm responsible for the nautical operation within the river division, basically the famous Viking Longships. We're here today in Cologne on the Viking Seine, and together with my colleagues, Captain
Johan for the Viking.TV, and I will answer all your nautical questions.
And my chief engineer,
Tino Karbautzki from the Viking Seine, and I will try to answer all your technical questions.
We've prepared an episode that goes through the technical and navigational setup on a Viking longship. We will take you all the way from the bridge to the engine room, but also in a small town where the ships are being built. Now, first things first, let's get started with the ships themselves. We've been building longships since 2012, and we've got about approximately 50 longships now that are navigating the European waterways. Namely, these ships are on the
Rhine River and the Danube River.
In French waterways.
And of course, we also have a smaller version of it on the Douro River, but also all the way on the Elbe as well. But let's have a look at where the ships are going to be built. And we're going to be handing over to Karin Hagen, who's going to take us to the small town of Rostock, where the ships are being built.
Nestled along Germany's northern coastline is Rostock and the Neptune Yard, where we're going behind closed doors to watch the construction of our Viking longships. Come with me into this highly secured shipyard for a sneak peek at the 6 newest Viking longships being built. Before steel can be cut, months of design and consultation take place to finalize vision and direction.
The design is being made, the drawings are being made, a lot of discussions between the owner and the yard.
It's many inspirations and it's many solutions.
We think about lighting, we think about colors, we think about reflections.
Creating something from nothing, from a piece of steel to a piece of ship. That's something, of course, amazing.
Guided by architects from Iran and Storbråten, who created some of the world's finest cruise ships, including Seabourn and Disney, and Rotet Studios, leading designers of properties like the presidential bungalows for the iconic Beverly Hills Hotel, no stone has been left unturned in the ramp-up to production. With plans in hand, the next step is carving the steel.
This is where it all happens. Tons of steel is being cut and welded to build our magnificent longships.
The cutting process used to take scores of men with torches. Now it's in the hands of a computer.
All the coordinates on the section drawing are being noted, and then a numeric controlled cutting machine is cutting all the bits and pieces and also put a code on it.
Using these codes as a guide, workers assemble the base of the ship called the keel. Then all production stops to honor an age-old tradition known as keel laying.
Today is a great day for all of us. It's keeling of the next ship for Viking River cruises.
In the past, when they built a ship, they also want to satisfy the gods. And that's why nowadays we put a coin on the keel. It's an ancient habit from the very beginning.
The coin is meant to bring good fortune, and the ceremony is widely known as the moment the ship comes to life. A real privilege and a great honor to help get this ship off to a good start. Rather than a linear construction process, the longships are built in sections, out of order and then joined later. But the way they actually do it was not what I was expecting.
At this stage, the sections are all built upside down because it's easier to put in the piping underhand rather than overhand. Next haul, they flip it and start working on it the right way up. You've seen the prefabrication halls. This is the second stage. And here, the sections are being assembled the right way up, and they're coming together to really start looking like a ship, or in this case, 2 ships.
Outside, the longships are prepared, painted, and made ready to face the elements. Inside, it feels like a different world.
It's like a giant treehouse, but made of steel.
Within this steel maze, structural elements, bulkheads, watertight doors, and other essential components are added.
All the connections are there, propulsion has been mounted and installed, the bow thrusters are in. Then finally you launch the vessel.
At last, it's time for the longships to leave their cozy quarters. They're carefully moved by barge, released into the water for sea trials, and then docked for interior construction and finishing work. And before you know it, these big ships will be out on the waterways of Europe. Finally, during the interior completion stage, the vessel is a buzz of activity. As rooms are finished, systems are checked, electrical is tested, and the team methodically steps through what's known as the snagging list.
The snagging list, they're famous, thousands of comments. Every little damage, everything has to be remedied.
Details everywhere, you have to go for the details. That's the way to get a good product.
This process continues non-stop right up to delivery day, the goal everyone is chasing, but once achieved is bittersweet.
I know what is the saddest day, it is delivery. When I walk out and see the ships, I'm of course very proud, but of course we also feel sad that we have to give away something which we have been working on for many months with all our heart and hands, and it's an emotional moment when these ships leave our harbor.
From here, each ship is christened amid a great deal of fanfare, a joyous tradition for good luck that dates back centuries. Then it's time to set sail, off to explore the waterways of the world.
It's a new way of cruising. I think it's fantastic.
We are very, very proud of these ships. It's a truly grand environment, a new way of thinking about hospitality on the river.
From point zero, when there was the first idea on a piece of paper, after 18 months you see a beautiful ship. What better thing can happen in your life than working on something like that?
The spectacular Longships, continuing the Viking tradition of innovation.
Hello and welcome to Maritime Mondays. My name is Sascha and I'm responsible for the nautical operation on the rivers, which means basically the famous Viking Longships. Together with my colleagues, we've prepared an episode today that looks at the navigational and technical features of a longship. Today, we're starting at the Alps. That's what you can see right behind me here. The reason for this is because the Alps is where it all starts. That's where the water is stored for the upcoming summer season. And as you can see, there's lots of snow behind us. But we're not going to stay only in the Alps. We're also going to visit France. To be precise, we're going to go to Paris. Because in Paris, we're going to have some of our newest additions to the Viking fleet, which are our Seine longships. These longships have just been awarded the Green Award for environmental friendliness, and that's based on the fact that these ships have battery packs on board, which they can sail with for a certain amount of time. Here, our engineer in France will explain you exactly the technicalities around that setup. From France, we're going to move to Germany, where we're going to introduce you to the wheelhouse of one of our longships and also look at the engine room, where the engineer, together with the captain, are going to take you through a full tour on the technical setup of the ship. Last but not least, we're going to finish in Austria, where we're going to look at the water treatment plant on board of all of our longships, which ensures that we have minimal impact on the environment. Good. But let's get started with a bird's eye view of the harbor to see where our longships are all docked during the winter time. Cologne is a city in the middle of Germany. You might know Cologne from your grand European river journey. In the outskirts is one of our largest harbor that we operate. We dock up to 30 ships at one time in this harbor. During the summer months, the officers on board, together with technicians, gardeners, painters and carpenters, were maintaining the vessels. Though there was some time for some exercise too. On several occasions, the officers set up a rowing event to find the fastest rower within the fleet. The rower had to deliver the flag of the country the ship is docked at, all the way from the stern across the entire longship length to the bow of the ship. Let us stay in Cologne for a while
and learn more about the wheelhouse and the engine room.
Good afternoon everybody, my name is Johan. I'm one of the captains by Viking Cruises. I work in the R&D operation. Those are the ships who are sailing from Amsterdam to Budapest. I wish you all a fantastic new year and I'd like to see you soon back on one of our vessels. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Roy van der Bos and I'm the captain from the Viking Hermod. I have 7 years experience as a captain and I work now 2 years for Viking. Before I have a lot of experience on container vessel and tank vessel. We will show you now today the wheelhouse here from the Viking Longship.
Hello, my name is Henk van Os. I'm 35 years old and I'm from the Netherlands. I'm the captain of the Viking Mani. This is my fourth season with Viking and I'm a captain for 7 years now. We would like to take you to the wheelhouse to show you around. Good, welcome in the wheelhouse. I'd like to start to tell you about the rudder we have. Of course, our ships are not equipped with an actual rudder under the ship. We have 4 propellers, but my colleague will come to that in the next step. The rudder we have, with which we steer the ship, is actually only with this stick. This is a semi-automatic pilot, so if I push this 10 degrees to the starboard side, the ship will maintain a course of 10 degrees to the starboard all the time. So as long as I do nothing then, the ship will remain turning. If I would push this to a 90 degrees, then the ship will make a circle actually within 4 minutes, because it makes the 90 degrees a minute turn then. If you keep it straight, the ship will maintain to go forward. So actually the semi-autopilot only maintains the course for us, because if a corner or a turn is coming into the river, we still have to work, otherwise the ship will maintain its course and go forward, and we have a major issue with that. Of course we can also put it on the hand with the button here. And then every input I do is what the rudder at that moment is doing. So then we have a direct turning of the ship, which like a dinghy would do with an outboard engine. So this seems like it's perfect to maneuver the ship, but it's actually not. And that's the next step we're going to explain you by the handles of the engines. So what we also have on this side of the ship, and of course also on the other panel, is a button to give the controls to the outside. And now you see our nice, warm, cozy wheelhouse. But if we have to do a lock or we have to dock the ship, then most of the time you see us standing outside, hanging over something which looks like a grill. But that's actually our outside lock where we can also steer the ship from. So that goes from the inside. I can push a button, it starts blinking. Then normally I run outside, or my second man is also already outside to take over the control. And we're going to show you now how that works.
My colleague sent the command now to this starboard side of the ship. Here we can control the ship from the starboard. We have the same joysticks as in the wheelhouse. We have a VHF for communicating with other ships. We have intercom to communicate with our colleagues on board. Buttons to push, for example, the wheelhouse, the radar up and down. And here also the screen for the radar. When we sail into the lock or we have a maneuver, we can see the whole side of the ship, from the front to the back.
Of course, on the stretches we can also have some low bridges or lower parts or shallow parts where we need to go through, and then we need to lower the top line of the ship. For that we have a hydraulic system to lower the wheelhouse and other parts like the mast, the exhaust in the back and the radar in the front, which is all controllable from either the wheelhouse or the outside controls. If I push this button, then you'll see we go down. Of course, on the really shallow parts, like on the Main River, we can also put the railings down, so the whole ship will be with the highest point on deck level, and then the sun deck will be closed for passengers, because if we cannot secure the safety then. Now you see we're going down all the way onto deck level. We're right behind the bar. Now we're almost there. And then you see, now we hit like rock bottom. If this wouldn't be enough to secure the clearance of the bridge, we can also still drop the upper part of the wheelhouse as well. So now you can see the windows are going down. And when we do this, the highest point of the ship will be on deck level, so that's around 7 meters. And with that, mostly in the season, we can travel everything. So we have this hatch over here, So maybe sometimes you see the wheelhouse is gone, but you see a head popping off above the deck, and then it's your captain sailing with his head outside. So we can still clear the lower parts as well. If it's also a tight part, then you will see us outside and do the maneuver from there. Go.
When we sail from A to B on the straight river, it's very easy. Then we sail with the semi-autopilot. When we have to maneuver, for example, when we come by the docking station or in the lock, we use our thrusters and pods in the back. We have here on the starboard side 2 pods in the back, and on the port side also 2 pods in the back. In the front we have 2 bow thrusters. We can steer the pods in the back with those handles. We can give power here and we can turn them in the back. As you can see also on the screen, we can turn them 360 degrees. And also in the bow, our thrusters, we can turn them also to 360 degrees. This is how we do the maneuver with a Viking longship. When we make contact with other ships, we can do it with our VHF radio. I will show you now how it works. It's the same as a phone. I will call now to our other ships. Hello, Viking Seine, this is the Viking Herald. I will pass you please on the port side.
Viking Herald, the Viking Seine, that is copy, you can pass on the port side.
Okay, thank you. Here we have the burning panel. We can do a lot of things with this. For example, we can see how the generators are working. Directly on the right side we have also the panel from the generators. Here we can start and stop the 4 generators from the ship. Also here you have the panel from the pods, from the port side and the thrusters from the front. We can start the thrusters in the front and we can start here also the thrusters from the back. It's a diesel electric ship, so we have not 2 head engines in the back. Here we have the depth meter. As you can see on the depth meter we have now a difference from 2.6, for example 7-8 feet. This is between the bottom from the river and the keel of the ship. Here on this screen we have the radar in the back. This radar we use for small places and small harbors, as you can see also in this harbor.
The AES system. Many ships have an AES system now, and in Europe this is regulated by law that all professional ships has an AES system. How is the AES working? The AES sends out a signal, a radio signal, what includes the name of the ship, position given by GPS, his course, his speed, and you can add this signal up with other information as how many souls on board, destination, cargo, kind of cargo, hazardous or not, etc, etc. And the other ships with an AES, they receive this signal and share it with the navigator. But since a few years, they share it also with the EGDIS, and then you can see on the EGDIS the other ships sailing over the chart. And you can imagine it is very strong and useful information, because there are spots who are so narrow that you have to wait for other ships. And in this case, you can see the ships already. You can see the ships already behind the curve or behind the section what is not safe to pass with both ships. So this information you can use to wait or to communicate with the other ships. How do we communicate with the other ships? For that we have radios on board, and our radios, they're working with shortcuts. So all registered radios built for maritime things. They working with shortcuts, for example, number 10, and that is connected to a frequency. It means that everybody with a radio what is built following international standards has the same frequency on channel 10. And then chapters of areas where we are connected to a radio channel. For example, on the Rhine River, all ships should be listened out on radio channel 10. That means when I have a question to another ship about its intention or course or whatever, I can just grab the horn and call the other ship with the name what I see in the ACDIS, and in the old times we were using this to clearly define the name of the other vessel, and then I can call Viking.TV, and he will respond because he's also listening on radio channel 10. We have more instruments in the wheelhouse. This screen is also connected to a radar, but this radar is in the tail, in the back of the ship, exactly on the stern, and it is an instrument where we are sailing reverse, backwards, into harbors like here, and then we have a clear view of everything what is behind the vessel. We have a depth finder. There are two sensors, one in the front and one in the aft, and they share information about the depth between keel and the river bottom with the navigator. This is our wind meter, what indicates the wind around us. We have a compass, other instruments for the light, the anchor monitoring, because the anchors are remote controlled on the ship. I can drop the anchors from the wheelhouse, and this shares information with me how many meter or length of the anchor wire is already out of the vessel. We have alarm systems, intercoms, secondary information about the content of the fuel, of the volume of the fuel on board, fresh water, a phone inside the ship. You saw it was a touchscreen. Now we go to other fuels interfaces. We have a PA system, so we can make safety announcements. This panel is part of the camera, searchlights, buttons. Yeah, when you like to more know about the wheelhouse on the Viking cruise ship, I will invite you to join us on a trip, and I'd like to be pleased to explain all other details from this wheelhouse. Thank you for listening, and a warm greeting from Cologne all the way to you. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Tino Karbautzki and I come from Germany. I live on the Isle of Rügen. This is the biggest island of Germany and placed in the Baltic Sea, near to Rostock. After my high school diploma, I trained 3 years to become a ship mechanic, and after this I studied ships engineering. And since 2014 I'm working for Viking as an engineer. Welcome to our engine control room. The engine control room is, you can say, the office of the engineer department. We have here our laptop where we can write emails, we can report claims and so on, and also we have a lot of controlling from here. So this display is the most important display for us engineers, because we are able here to see, as you can see, all the levels of our tanks, like fuel oil or fresh water. We have the control over some pumps and valves. For example, the freshwater system, we can open and close the valves for these units. And we have also our alarm monitoring on this display. We have this same display on the wheelhouse, but there are the function a little bit different than for this one. On this side you see also a big screen from the company Draves. This is the screen for our air condition system. On this page now you can see our child water unit. But we are also able to control all the AC units in the whole ship. This display here on top is the display for our Zeppelin Caterpillar generators. Here we can also read out some data from our generators. And behind me we have also a lot of switchboards. These are now the switchboards for our air condition supply and for our transformators. This is our back converter room. We call it converter room because here all the electrical magic is happening. Our ship is supplied only by diesel electrical system. So that means we have only generators on board. We have no main engines for a propulsion system. We have 4 generators which supply our whole ship with electricity. Actually, you can see on this display that we have no generator running. We have only a shore connection standby. That means we take our electricity from shore. We can supply the whole ship with the electricity from shore. The generators produce 690 volt electricity and bring all the electricity here to these cabinets. And these cabinets convert and transfer all the electricity in different voltage and different kind of electricity, like AC and DC. Behind this, all these switchboards, we have a lot of switches, converters, and electrical power management supplying systems. And also you can see here 2 big transformators where we transformate all the electricity and supply the ship. The same room we have also in the front with the same technique. Here we are now in our back engine room. This is one of the biggest engine rooms here on our ships. On my right hand side, so on the starboard side of the ship, you can see a generator. This is a generator from the company Caterpillar. Yes, it's US marked, and it's a 6-cylinder inline with a turbocharger, of course. And you can see there on top all our exhausts are filtered. The other side of the engine room, so the port side of the ship, we have also a generator. This is a C32, also made by Caterpillar. This is a V12 engine with 32 cubic inches. At the back side of the ship, we have placed our propulsion system units. We have 2 units, as you can see here, on the port side, and the same 2 units on the starboard side. These units are made by company Shuttle. The electrical engine is directly on the gearbox, and under the waterline we have 2 twin propellers. The units are 360 degrees turnable. In the middle of the engine room, we have our child water unit. You can see here the same display like in our engine control room, and we are here also able to control the whole air condition unit on the whole ship. This unit is a child water unit because it cools down the child water what our air condition units need to cool down the air. We are now located in the front engine room. The front engine room is in the front of the ship, nearly in the head. On my left hand side you can see also a generator. This is also a C32 generator. Also with twin turbochargers and also with a filter system. On my right hand side you can see a bow thruster unit. This is the electrical engine which supplies the bow thruster with electricity and with a turnable gear. Our bow thrusters are also from the company Shuttle, but they are working without propellers. They are working like a pump jet. Here you can see the pump jet from the other side. You can see here the gearbox, and on the other side the electrical engine. They are both connected with the shaft. This is the engine room of generator number 2. Generator number 2 is a C18 generator, also with turbocharge and also with a filter system. Behind generator number 2 you can see our provision cooling plant. This provision cooling plant has 3 compressors, and these compressors make sure that our cooling tables and all the fridges are cooled all the time. Viking improves all new ship generations. On the newest generation, the ships are supplied by electrical battery packs. But to see this, let's travel to France.
Our Viking Seine ships feature state-of-the-art engineering, deluxe accommodations and streamlined Scandinavian interiors. Plus, these ships feature customized hulls and engines specifically built to navigate the historic Seine River. These ships are built in Germany and are transported to France either by using a dock ship or by sailing across the open water using a pilot before arriving in Le Havre, which is the closest harbour on the Seine. During the winter, spring and autumn, it is not possible for a river cruise ship to sail across to Le Havre. Therefore, the MV Yacht Express, which is specifically designed for submersible heavy lift transportation, has been chartered to transport the Viking Skager and the Viking Fjordin from Rotterdam, where they were built, to Le Havre. During the summer month, the Viking Kari and the Viking Ratrit were able to sail by themselves all the way from Rotterdam to Le Havre. For this purpose, a pilot was hired to assist in the sailing. Approximately halfway between the two countries, the pilots were switched. The German specialist left the vessel and flew back to Germany, whilst the French specialist came on board to safely navigate the ship into Le Havre. Once the ship had sailed from Le Havre to the heart of Paris, the ship was welcomed by a committee of the Green Award, which handed over an award for the environmental friendliness of the propulsion system of the ship. But more about the environmental friendliness of the Seine ships from our engineer on board the Viking ships in Paris.
Good day to you all. My name is Konrad Łysko. I am representing Viking River Cruises France, and my role on board is an engineer. Through 21 years, I had been working as a marine engineer on merchant navy with additional duties as a training officer as well as the safety officer. As a holder of unlimited license of marine chief engineer with 6 years of field experience on a ships operating with an oil and gas industry, equipped with remote operating underwater vehicle, I was participating in maintenance of an oil and gas platform, gas pipes, and localization on seabed toxic gases and bombs left after World War II, where I gained technical and practical knowledge important to maintain our modern river fleet. However, today as a proud engineer on board of one of our Viking River cruise ships operating in France and a part of Viking family, I would like to present for all of you latest design and modern hybrid technology on our good vessels we are equipped. Part of the power produced by the generator is being stored into a set of batteries connected to both main and emergency power distribution of the ship, installed in the boat technical room where we are at the present. The battery pack consists of the 3 strings of batteries connected in parallel. Each string includes 14 maintenance-free lithium batteries connected in serial to a battery control unit. The set of battery pack can supply a maximum power of almost 400 kW. Depending on the state of charge of the batteries, a part of this power is used for the peak shaving to supply the main distribution of the ship. Unlike the former Viking River ships generation, where the emergency power was produced by the emergency generator set, the emergency power on board the Seine hybrid ships is provided by the battery pack. In case of blackout, the battery pack supplies the emergency switchboard and equipment necessary for your and our safety. Weekend games have been demonstrated by the installation of an Orca energy storage solution to a vessel, which reduces fuel consumption by 15%, CO2 emissions by 15 up to 20%, nitrogen oxides, poisonous gases emission by 25 up to 35%. With conjunction with a diesel particulate filters our engines are equipped, we are able to capture and store exhaust soot and reduce toxic emission from our diesel engine, which has positive impact on our environment. All of this modern technology let us obtain Green Award certificate. Green Award certificate proves our dedication to a high quality, safety and environmental standard of our company Viking River Cruises. I hope all of you found this interesting as I do on a daily basis and let you exploring the world with comfort and satisfaction with our modern, beautiful river fleet. I hope I see you shortly on board.
Good, and we are back here in Cologne again. Now there's lots of questions that have come in, quite a few technical ones, navigational, but generally as well about the cruise itself. So I'm gonna I'm going to ask the first question here, which came in from Gerald from Atlanta. Now, Gerald has been asking here, what alternate arrangements are made when the rivers are low? So if we have low water, what are the arrangements you are making as a captain?
Yeah, all ships have an identical sister ship. When a ship gets stuck on the middle of the cruise due by a broken lock or the water or whatever, we can transfer the guest from one ship to another ship. We call it a ship swap, and then can you continue your cruise on an identical vessel to your destination.
So same ship, same stateroom, basically better stuff, right?
Even better stuff, yes.
And that brings us right away to Krista from Bluffton. And Krista is saying here, can you tell me how fast the Viking Longship typically travels? But further on, and this is really one for the technical setup of the ship, what is the maximum speed you can achieve with that?
Krista, this depends always on the river and also the direction. If you go upstream, then it's possible that you go only 11 kilometers per hour. If you go downstream, it's also possible that you go 32 kilometers per hour.
Now, Krista is also saying here, are there any speed limits on the river? I think, Johan, that's one for you, yeah?
Yes, when the ship is sailing, we create a wake. And to avoid any damage to other ships, shore, parking ships, or even sister ships, we are bounded by a speed, but we are free to implement self. However, when there's high water, then there are speed limits. But that's only when the water level has a certain high to avoid damage to the dams and dikes.
That's a safety requirement, I assume. Yeah. Right? Now, coming further here, we've got Barrett here from Howard Beach. And Barrett here is saying, when it comes to a captain here, what are the sort of training requirements? Perhaps you can tell us a little bit, how did you get your license? How do you become a captain actually on a river ship?
Yeah, first of all, you have to go to the captain's school. The captain's license, the permit, is valid for whole Europe. However, as riverboat captain, you need local knowledge on the area where you are sailing. So next to your basic captain license, you have to add the rivers where you're working on, or a certain stretch of the river. So with my Rhine license, I'm not allowed to sail on the Danube, and with my Danube license, I'm not allowed to sail on the Rhine River. So I have to add those to my captain license.
I'm going to stay on the navigational side with one more question here, and that's from Lavinia from Stevenage. And Lavinia is saying here, can you tell us about the navigation through the locks on the river? Are many of these still operated by lock keepers? So is there physically somebody there, or is that automated? And how long does it take us to get through a lock actually?
Yeah, the locks. There's a strong transition on the moment. When I start working, every lock had a lock keeper. Now it's more centralized. Let's say 2 lockmasters are controlling the lock from distance, and they do 4 till 6 locks. The time to pass a lock is average around 30 minutes. However, there are locks that are a bit slower because they're a bit old, and we have also faster locks. So between 20 minutes and 1 hour, we have everything inside. And there's a nice anecdote. On some cruise, for example, from Paris to Zurich, we're passing 43 locks. When you add this to 30 minutes, we spend 1 day of our cruise just in the locks.
That's an interesting one, actually, how long it actually takes to get through these locks. But it's quite interesting, and for sure we're going to have some clips on the locks as well at some point. So we're going to show that. But now we've got a question here from Rose from Homer. And Rose, and I think this is an interesting one for from the navigational side as well. The question is, he heard that the Viking longships were clearly designed so they could include bigger suites. So that's about the size of the ship itself. With more outside space for the veranda staterooms. How does that work? How is that possible with the space you have available there?
Yeah, that's very detailed. Of course, riverboats cannot be so big as on the ocean. So to create more opportunities for all stateroom types, Viking decentralized the corridor. But to explain that and to give you a better overview, we have a video for you.
I think James had set that up for us. He's just writing here. He's got a short clip that is going to explain how these staterooms are actually set on board. James, please, if you can show us that clip shortly as well.
Stateroom choices have expanded thanks to a lateral shift in design where we moved the ship's corridor to create space on one side while rotating rooms on the other. The Longships are now graced with inviting veranda staterooms. open, spacious 2-room suite. And our sumptuous Explorer Suite, the largest suite on any river cruise ship in Europe.
We have really been able to find the optimum solution. So we'll be the only river cruise line giving our guests this great experience.
So now we've got here a good lead in actually from Ted from Hamburg. That's Hamburg in the States. And Ted here is saying, how do the ships dispose of the waste generated during the cruise? That's a good one actually.
Yeah, we have a wastewater system on board. We collect all the wastewater from all cabins, from the laundry and also from the galley. And we have a natural bacteria wastewater treatment system. And this split the waste from the water and filters also the water. And we are allowed to pump out the filtrated water in the river back because our water has the same quality like drinking water in Germany.
Thank you very much. Now, when it comes to the waste as well, what about the waste that is generated not in the water, but the physical waste as such? For example, anything that we dispose into the garbage can, where does that go?
Yeah, of course, we are in Europe and we're sailing in countries as Germany, where there's a high environment level aware. On ocean, 200 miles from the coast, we can dump our trash in the water. That is not allowed on the rivers. Ocean ships are also not doing that. Every port where we stop, we can discharge our garbage. We have to sort it in all types, and then we discharge it to the local community, and they have more opportunities to solve this garbage problem.
Thank you very much. And I've got here a question from John from Thousand Oaks in the United States. And John is asking here about the types of tours that we're offering as well, the types of experiences here. And that's quite a tricky question. So the question here is, which caters more to slow walkers? Is it more on the ocean side? Is it more on the river side? Or is there a different distinction that we can use for this?
Yeah, that's a more complicated question, but it has an easy answer. It depends. It doesn't depend on which ship you're going. It depends a little bit when you go on the shore. But Viking offers so-called leisure or leisurely tours, especially for this.
So it doesn't actually matter if you're on a river or an ocean, as long as you take the leisurely tour, you're more on the slow walking tour as such.
Yes, our ships are not so big. Ocean ships are not so big, and the river vessels are pretty overviewing. We have elevators that can move you from one deck to another deck. But when you go on the shore, we have excursions with the multicals, or what I said, the leisurely walks, where we have more people who are not so fast walkers.
Super, and that answers basically the second question of John as well. Thank you for asking. John was asking here about the elevators as well, and I think you answered that. So there are elevators on the ship too. Good, I've got a question here from James from Sacramento. And James is asking completely away now from the European river cruises to the Mississippi. That's an interesting one. It goes about the technical, what type of technical changes you need to implement when you go from a longship, a typical longship here on the European rivers, to the Mississippi now, where you're building new ships here.
Okay, on the Mississippi, you have to start, of course, also with the body of the ship. The Mississippi has complete different depth. Also, it's much more wider. You have more stream there than in the Europe vessels. So the vessel construction is completely different, like on our ocean our river vessels.
Thank you very much. Now, going here from the Mississippi, and as we said, we're just building there, so I'm sure we're going to also have a movie about the shipbuilding there soon to come. We're going to go to Scott here, who is in Smyrna. And Scott here is asking about the bridge communication. So I think this is really one from the navigational side. So bridge communication here, how does the communication work? There's a couple of points in there. One question is about the language that's going to be used, but also the difference between how is the communication towards the shore side, and is there some sort of control tower, as we can see on the airlines usually?
Yeah, first question first. It was in Europe that we have to use the border language. When the ship is in France, we have to speak French. When the ship is in Germany, we have to speak German. However, over the last decades, German is become the main language on the international waterways like the Rhine River and the Danube River. However, when you go on the Danube very east-south, so all the way to Romania, Russia is still first language. When you go into the French waterways like the Seine and the Rhone, there you have to speak French. When you come in the big ports, Rotterdam, Antwerp, where you have a lot of seagoing traffic, there the navigator have to speak English as well. And what was the second question?
And the question was here about the communication to the shore side. I'm talking here now about the office. So is there sort of an airline tower somewhere in Basel in Switzerland? Or how can we assume this connection is there?
Yeah, anno 2021, we have all modern communication tools like on shore. We have internet, we have telephone available. There is in Basel a communication center, but there is not a tower that has a big overview. However, on junctions in the Netherlands, where you have a few waterways crossing with a high traffic, there is a local tower, and they observe and monitor all vessels who are sailing there and give them advice when it's necessary.
So it's very much run on a governmental local basis as well when it comes to monitoring, and then of course the communication with the office if there's high water, low water, or any other operational things.
That's correct.
Thank you. Now let's switch a little bit to the technique here.
Okay.
On the technical side here, we've got a question here about the environmental friendliness. That brings us back to the Longships here, and the question is, Nan from New York is saying here, we have sailed with Viking on the Rhine and lifted. Thank you for that comment. What makes the ships environmental friendly?
So we have different things on board. We have solar units on the top of the vessel. We are also able to use shore connection in each port, so we can supply the whole ship with completely shore electricity. And we're also improving our new vessel generations. For example, we have now our new French vessels. They have one generator less on board, but for that they have a battery pack, which makes it possible to drive completely electrical with this ship.
Mm-hmm. So it's the electric power that makes the difference there. Thank you. We also have got a question from Kurt here, and I think I can answer that for you, Kurt. You're saying here, can you take breakfast back to your room? I think we can make this even better. We can bring it to your room as such, so that's absolutely possible. But that brings us again to a navigational question here. Johan, the question is here from Alan from Myrtle Beach. And Alan is saying here, if you compare the Rhine River to the Danube River, from a navigational perspective, which one is more difficult, or is there one more difficult?
Yeah, it's always hard to point out what is the most difficult, what is the most... If daylight, all rivers are easy. When it comes to night, foggy, strong currents by high water, they all get complicated. When you have a good local knowledge about the stretch where you're sailing, and with all the modern technology a Viking Longship has, actually all ships are, I don't want to say easy, because sometimes with fog and high water it is complicated, but they all can be all tricky, but all able to master on a safe way.
Now, going further here, Andy from Grand Rapids, he's asking about the cost of a longship. What can we estimate that the cost is approximately of a longship?
So one longship costs about $30 million.
Okay, and that brings us straight into the setup of the longship itself. And the question here comes from Stephen in Chicago. And Stephen is saying here, when you think about the longships sailing on the river, why can a longship, or generally a river ship, not sail on the open ocean? What's the reason for this?
That's a good question. I have heard it many often from my guests. This is my answer. When you build a ship, you have to choose which area it works, which area it sails, depending on the size and ocean or river. You have to choose for that. But why? When you build a ship for the ocean, it must be strong, because there are huge waves or big waves, or can be. On the river, you have more a problem of less water, so shallow rivers, and we have small waves. So a river ship can build more light, and I don't say it's weak, because it is still strong and good connected, but it has less steel than an ocean ship. On the other side, when you bring a riverboat to the ocean, it's not so strong as an ocean ship. So you will have crazy turns and moves when you get big waves. And I think the ship is not built for that. And next to that, all sides of the ships are completely glassed. We have a lot of windows, so you can always see the beautiful scenery, but that is not good in a storm out on the ocean.
And that means, and there's a question around this, is there ever any rough sea on the rivers? Does that actually happen?
It's also a very famous question, and it's a short answer, no. When you get seasick on a riverboat, you will be the first one.
Here we go. So there is no rough sea here as such. Good. Sheila from Winnipeg is going back to the shipbuilding here with a question saying, how long does it take to build one ship?
I can say from my own experience, because when I started working for Viking, I started in the yard in Rostock where the ships are built. And from the first year play to the complete finished ship, it takes about 6 months. And in that year I was there, we built 6 ships in 1 year.
Thank you. Now coming further here, we're going to stay here with the engineering side here. What type and brand of main engines are there on board? The question continues here from Andre in Canada, who's saying here, when I talk about the propulsion units, I understand they are azimuths. So what do we have on board?
Okay, our system, we have a diesel electrical system. So that means we have no main engines and we have no auxiliary engines. We have only generators on board, which producing electricity. So these generators are from the company Caterpillar. And we have 2 different types. We have 2 C18 Caterpillar engines and 2 C32 Caterpillar engines. They have all in all around about 4,000 horsepower power. And our propulsion system is completely supplied by electrical energy. So our propulsion units in the back are from the company Shuttle. And these are twin propeller units. So that means you have 8 propellers in the back. And you have also 2 pump jets in the front, which are using they're working like a pump jet without propeller units.
Mm-hmm. There's a question which just came in by Peter from Seattle. And Peter here on the engines is asking who maintains these engines. Is it the engineer on board, or does the ship have to go into a dry dock or something to get that maintained?
During the season, the engineers on board maintain the engines by their own. During the winter time, when the ships are docked in the winter harbor, we have contracts with companies which make the whole overhauling of the engines and also the other propulsion units and so on.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's stay with the shipbuilding here, but move a little bit more to the design element of it. And here I've got Diane from the States who is saying, I've been on 3 different Longships as a guest, of course. They all seemed essentially identical. Now, what kind of changes are made from a new ship or from one ship to another ship, from one series to another series?
Optically, you will not, or it's not right to say. It's hard to find the difference between our longship types. What we always improve is the environmental fingerprint, what Viking leaves. So from each generation of the longship, we change technical stuff to save more energy and to make the ships more efficiency.
So that's a tip for Diane when you come next time on the ships. Check what the differences are, because there's also differences in the fabrics as such. So if you go from one ship to the other, you might see some different colors. You might stain sometimes wood, sometimes stone. So there are slight differences, but they don't pop in your eyes right away. Right? Good. And here we're going further here from Jeff in Washington. And Jeff is asking a question about the sailing times. So the comparison daylight sailing versus night sailing. And what he writes here is that on most of the films that we're showing, the ship is sailing during the day, which makes sense. This is when you see the ship as such. But what does that mean in reality? Do we sail mostly during the night, mostly during the day? Is it equal? What's the setup?
In comparison to ocean, where strips has a strict regime and only sail in the night, we sail during the day, but also during the night. It depends on the stretches, the distance of the port of calls, where the guests like to go on shore. Sometimes it's the ship sailing over the day, but the guest can do an excursion. Then you stop by a certain port, the guests go in the motor coach, the ship continue, the motor coach come back before lunchtime or before dinner, and the guests embark again. However, all the best stretches, so the most beautiful stretches, like the romantic Rhine Valley, very often seen in river cruise movies. They all sailed by daylight. That is for all rivers. So it's depending on stretch and area.
Thank you. That brings us to Marianne, and that brings us again to a more environmental aspect of sailing here. And I think what Marianne is looking for, she's saying here, what is done with an older ship that is not long in use? So generally in the river cruise industry, we see an ocean ship being beached once it's a certain time old. Now we never really see this in the river industry. You never see this as publicly. How does that work?
Yeah, we have European regulations for this, and so in Europe you are not allowed to bring a ship somewhere on the beach to recycle it there. So we have regulations in Europe for a situation like this. Yeah, and if it's necessary, we will recycle it completely.
And that's what's being done in the docks most probably again,
Correct.
right? Back to the docks where it's built, and that's where the steel is then recycled. Good. I've got Mika here from Montclair, from the States here. And Mika, now Johan, that's a question for you. You are Dutch, so it fits perfectly. Mika is saying here, we are getting on the Quasier, sailing mostly in Holland. So they're going to be back on the Quasier in Holland. And what they want to know is if they sail in Holland on the Quasier, if they're going to have a Dutch captain on board the ship.
Yeah, I can even answer this question in Dutch, but I will do it on English. That the Quasier is in the Netherlands will not say it must have a Dutch captain, but I know that the Quasier has 2 Dutch captains. I know them personally. So when you come on the Quasier, you will find a Dutch captain.
So we've got a bit of background perhaps on that. We've got about 140 captains on the rivers. It's roughly about 400 officers. And from these 140 captains, we've got quite a mix of different nationalities, but of course we're going to try to put them into the location where they're sailing in. And this has very much to do as well with the licensing, right? Because you need the license for the stretch which you're sailing on. And that also has often to do with the nationality where you're from.
Yeah, one side is true, but the Viking ships are sailing through whole Europe. So many captains, they have a permit, for example, from the North Sea all the way to the Black Sea or to Budapest. So it's kind of a mix, but yes, the captains from the former Eastern European countries, they sail more on the Danube, and the Dutch captains, they sail more in the Netherlands and the Rhine River.
Good, and here I've got a question which I think there's a bit of confusion about the electricity on board the ship. So the question here is from Stephen, back in Chicago. I think, Stephen, we had a question from you already. Thank you very much for bringing them in. Stephen is saying here, the Longships are entirely electric. Do they recharge at some point? So I think first we need to look at the Longships are not entirely electric, so let's clarify this.
Correct.
And then also the recharging.
As I answered in the further question already, we have only generators on board, so that means we produce only electricity. So, and the second point of the question, we have now 2 new different new generations of Longships in the fleet. They are traveling now in France, and they have 1 generator less, and for that they have an electrical power pack on board. So they are able to sail completely electrically. And this they can charge on shore with the shore connection cables also, and they can charge these also with their own generators during sailing.
The question here with the language has been coming up a couple more times here in the chat. Let's just come back to this one more time. So the question here about the jet, is there one common language that we could say is spoken across all the rivers?
No. On board we speak English, and on the rivers, like the Quasier, what is in the Netherlands, there the captain will use more Dutch. When you come in Germany, the German lockkeeper, you will use more German. When you go all the way till Romania, Bulgaria, they will find port masters where you have to speak Russian. So there's not one common language. The plan is there to create in Europe a kind of a river speak English, but that is in the basic on the moment. European Union is working on that, and on the moment, no.
So there's various languages that you need to know there.
Yeah, you have to know a few languages when you sail on a stretch that contains a few countries.
Now, interestingly, now we've got similar questions here now from Robert from Myrtle Beach, from James, and from Diane. And the question is about, it's a more technical setup as such. The question is here, if the engines fail on a Longship, what is the backup? And the question here goes in the direction, is it all computer-based, or is it manual, or how is the backup actually generated there?
Our power management system is completely electrical. So there's a program behind which runs the generators like the consumption of the ships needs to. In a case a generator dies, let's say, we have also an emergency generator on board, and this will start immediately to supply the most important things like propulsion system for this case.
Thank you. And along the same lines, I've got Linda here, and I'm going to pass this to you. Johan, the question here is, have any of the river ships ever gotten stuck in a lock, or is it actually possible to get stuck in a lock?
Yes, there is. On this answer is a yes. One of the ships from our competitors, I don't will say any names, ever get stuck in a lock next to a barge that was a bit wider than the lockkeeper knows. And because this lock was a bit older and the walls were not straight, but a little bit like this, after a while sinking, the two ships get stuck, and it was the end of the cruise of that ship. But that's the only story I know.
But I hope that's a very, very long time ago, and I hope that lockkeeper is not there anymore, because this doesn't happen these years anymore, right?
They are very aware of that now, and almost all locks in Europe, they ask wide of the ship by every lock producer to avoid this.
Here we go. So we learn from these things that might have happened in the industry. Good, we've got some very nice comments here as well. We've got comments here from Mark and from Ivar. Ivar, for example, from Eagle Mountains here saying fascinating information. I'm looking forward to sail with Viking later this year again. Thank you very much as well for the comment here. Good, then let's go more into a technical setup one more time with Tom from Reno here. And Tom is saying here, just a second here, Tom is saying here, the electrical system one more time. We saw the ships on the Seine River. We saw that they have battery packs. But the battery packs are not the only power they have on board. So the question is asking here, what if the electricity is gone? So what's the backup engine there?
The thing is, the older generations had 4 generators on board. The new generations will all have 3 generators and 1 battery pack. With this battery pack, it's not possible that the ship will get dark or something like this. So because you have always the electrical power in the batteries, and you are also able to for example, to sail to Paris completely electrical. So that's a big thing, the difference between the older generations.
Good, and I'm going to stay on the Seine here. I've got Mary here from the States. She's saying here, when we come back to the Seine Longships, right? They are basically, we saw them in the movie as well. We saw them how they are docked there. The question is here, where will these ships be docked in Paris? And I think I can answer that question there. So the new Seine ships that we're going to have, we've got 4 of them, as you've seen them on the video, and they're going to be docked right in the city center of Paris. And when we say city center of Paris, to get a bit of a feeling of where this is you are about 10 to 15 minutes walk away from the Eiffel Tower. So when you go on the top deck of the ship, you actually see the Eiffel Tower. And from there, you can actually walk forward to the Eiffel Tower. It's not far from there, so it's actually really walking distance there. Good. And that brings us on to a navigational question here from Ken from Naperville in the States. And Ken is asking here, how much clearance to bottom makes the captains nervous?
Yeah, that's also a good question. The government and also the insurance require 1 foot, so 30 centimeters, between river bottom and keel. So when we have less, we are not allowed to cruise. When you have lower, shallow water, the river is not always same deep or shallow. So you must know the shallowest points. And when you come closer to shallow points, you have to reduce the speed of the ship, because there is, by displacements, there is some squat. And to avoid any contact, you have to pass the dry spot, slow down, and when you drive slow down, then you are safe and everything will go smoothly. And that is part of a job of a riverboat captain, to cruise with lower water levels.
I've actually never seen you nervous. I assume that has never happened, right?
Thank you very much, but I'm a bit nervous now.
Good. And that brings us here to Amy. Amy from Monterey is asking here about the captain's quarters. So Amy wants to know what do they actually look like? How can we assume that you actually live on board the ship, right? How do you live on board?
Yeah, we have such a kind of a job that we cannot go home every evening. We're not picked up by a chopper or something. I sleep in a crew stateroom. There is a small difference between the officers and the other staff, but I have a regular officer stateroom, and yeah, it is good enough to sleep there and make a shower, and then I can drink my coffee on the ship, so I don't need a big living room.
I'm going to tag on to this question here because it has been asked in here as well. The question was about the food on board. So, are you eating with the crew?
Yes, a few times a week when I have time for that. I like to lunch or take breakfast or dine with the guests. But most of the time I eat with the crew. They have very good crew food. Viking is very aware on the high quality of crew food, and it's also an important thing on the ship. And as a captain between the crew, I know what is living. So yes, I like to eat with my crew and join dinner with them.
Here we go. So we all basically are together. There's no levels there, right? And that brings us to a question that goes into your qualifications. And the qualification question here comes from Barry from Sarasota. And Barry here is asking, if you are a captain on board a river ship, if you're an engineer on board a river ship, could you now basically walk off here and go on an ocean ship? Is that possible? Is this the equivalent in terms of the training? Or is this something completely different? And I'm going to start here with Tino first.
So normally it's completely different. You need completely different papers on ocean ships like on river ships. Personally, I can work on ocean ships because I learned there. And later on I came to the river.
So you first did ocean, then went to rivers as such. Yeah? I'm not going to ask you what you like more, so you can hold that question. But I'm going to ask more from our captain's side here. We're saying here, river, ocean, there is a difference there. There's a personal opinion as well, what one likes more. Is it the river side of sailing or the ocean side? But what is it about your licenses and the way you are set up there?
It's completely different. And the riverboat captain is getting nervous when the shore is away, and then sea captain is getting nervous when the shore is coming close. But they start already with the school, with the academy. My father was riverboat captain, so I did maritime school for sea officer because I like to go to the ocean. But then I figured out I'm getting seasick. So my plan B was river, and that's not completely true. To be honest, I like more the action on the river. And when I'm on the cruise ships, I do sometimes cruise, and I love it when I see the ocean, nice and calm, but to work there, it's a bit too slow. Yeah, so I like the rivers. That's a personal taste. I finished also high school for sea officer when I like to go back to the ocean and have to complete training session, what takes multiple years to get started as officer, not as a captain.
Good, and I'm going to stay there with the training. I know we had that question early on. This is Nicola. He's saying here, how long does it take to become a captain again?
Yeah, when you come from school, then you know a lot of things, but especially for a riverboat captain, it's an on-the-job job, so you have to gain knowledge and experience, and that takes a few years. And then when you have to add multiple stretches to your education, it can take a long time, but you see on ocean and river as well already a whole new generation of younger captains. Let's say start of the 40s, and in the older times the captain was always a bit older with the white beard, but that time is over.
Mm-hmm. So we saw two of our younger generation captains in the movie as well. But that means our average age is basically completely true if you look at our set of captains that we have.
Of course, they need a few years of experience, let's say 10, 15 years, to become captain. That is all standard.
There are some questions now around the docking area. So I'm going to stay with you, Johan, on these questions here. The first question goes around generally about the dockings. So when you sail on a European river, are there any fees that are being paid for docking or for actually sailing on the river? Or is it free to sail on the river and you pay for the docking? How does that work?
A long time ago, let's say in the time of the knights, there were a lot of chains about rivers and roads, and everybody was collecting money to pass on certain spots. After World War I, almost all rivers in Europe, especially the international one, they are protected by laws and regulation between the border countries to avoid this. So all international rivers are completely free of charge. In Germany, the channels, they had to pay fuel, but it is stopped 2 years ago. In France, I'm not completely up to date how it works there, but so far I know the only area where we still have to pay money is the Albert Channel in Belgium on our stretches.
And for the docking, there are fees for where you dock, right?
We work for Viking River Cruises, and Viking is a big company, and they own a lot of berths and docking spots on very good places around in Germany. So in Germany, we stay most of the time on A locations in the cities on a Viking ponton. However, when we go to the Danube, there we have to buy or reserve our berths and docking spots by third parties.
And staying with the docking situation here, there are cities which can take a lot of ships at the same time. And the question is here about Cologne as such. Yeah? So Cologne is one of these cities where various rivers basically meet. Now, how many ships can actually dock in the area of Cologne at one time? What's sort of an estimated number there?
I think Cologne can host 15 of those ships at the same time. However, there are cities in Europe who are even more busier.
Thank you. And from the docking here, I've got one more question here from Meg from the States. And Meg is, she has been on a Viking River cruise in 2019. And she's saying about the docking itself. She had an experience here where she was cruising under low water. And she's asking here, why is it possible that sometimes when there's low water, that a certain docking spot cannot be used during a low water period?
Yeah, not all docking spots, all docking locations are located on a deep river section. And what I already said before, when you have low water, it doesn't mean the whole river is low. There are certain areas. And typically in Europe, in Germany, that all big cities are located around dry spots. Probably had to do those cities start there because there was a spot where he was able to get over the river. And some of our docking locations, they are by low water, hard to reach, and to avoid any damage of the ship, we have to go to locations who are maybe a little bit farther away from the town, but they are a safer choice.
Good, and that brings us back to the propulsion system. We've got here Barry from Sarasota, who's asked a question before, and he's saying, I'm a bit confused about the difference in the propulsion system between a typical ocean vessel and a typical river ship. What is the difference there?
So normally on the ocean vessels, this is also, you have two different kinds on the ocean vessels. Depends, you mean a cruise line ocean ship or you mean a container ship? Container ship, mostly you have a shaft where a propeller is connected and which turns. On the big ocean vessels, they have also already these RC pods, which are 360 degrees turnable, and it's not necessary to use a ruler there. And we have also no rudder in our ship. We also can turn our propulsion system 360 degrees. So it's almost the same, but in a smaller version.
Good, and I'm going to stay on the technical setup here. The question here is about the discharge of your holding tanks. And the question here from Bob is where and when and where do you actually discharge your holding tanks? How's that possible?
So normally we can survive with the amount of the waste in our tanks about 14 days. We are able to call in every city a truck to discharge our waste. So this is no problem. We have fixed spots, like it's for example in Vienna. We can discharge directly to the town system, and on the other spots we can order trucks like we want. So this is no problem to discharge our waste.
Thank you. And this brings me from the technical setup one more time back to the docking situation. There's a question that's being asked back one more time on the docking situation. Now, how does that work that that you get a docking spot all the way in the city center or further out? What sort of system is there in place by the government that you're sort of set up where you dock?
We can easily say who comes first, buy first, or rule first. However, Vikings owns its docking spots. So third parties, as Viking or the community, they have different spots where you can park ships. Yeah, when the best spots are sold out, then you come on an, I don't want to say B location, but you come a little bit away from the city center, the first choice.
So you could really say that docking spots that are owned by us were always the first place, always at the city.
Yes, companies like Viking, they book already docking spots 2 years in advance to get the best places. It is also a double side of the popularity of riverboat cruising, because 10, 50 years ago there were not so many riverboat ships as now. The communities are aware of that and they build new docking locations. However, it is complicated, especially for third parties as Viking, to buy new property in the town to park their ships. But there is a plan, and Viking realized already a few nice docking spots in the last years on nice locations.
So it's not always a choice that we can make them. So there's local communities also who sometimes say who will be docking at which spot as such.
It has to do also with the size of the ships. Sometimes it fits better when a bigger or smaller ships is on the other position, and then it fits for all better. There's kind of industry behind to host all those ships, because there are more river cruise ships on the moment, and they all like to visit those beautiful towns.
Perhaps a bit of background information on this. We've got 14 colleagues of us who are working in our office in Basel, who are just focused on, in the Nautical Service Center, who are focused on booking these locks and docks, as we call it, so these docking spots and the locks as well. So there's quite an operational effort to do that. And then, of course, we've got in Wiebelsheim, which is close to Frankfurt, a technical office, and that technical office is actually building these docking areas that you're talking about. So this is quite another shift from how does the navigation work versus how do you get actually the docking spot, right? It's not just there, you need to actually build it there.
There's kind of something behind, yeah.
Good, and from the docking area here, there is, I'm going to stay actually on this with Howard. Howard is saying here, why do the longships need to moor with their bows upstream? What's the reason for that?
That's a good navigation question. I heard that more often. That is a little bit about history and practical. In the past, our engineer just said, ships with rudder blade and with pots. In the past, all ships had a rudder blade. And on the river, there is current. And it is very hard to maneuver a vessel when the current is from behind, because then is your rudder blade not working. On the Mississippi, for example, the towboats, they have a double set of rudder blades, one behind the propeller and one in front of the propeller. The one in front of the propeller, we call them flanking rudders, but that's the newer technology. So the docking spots, when they were built 50, 60, 80, 100 years ago, because the first docking spots in the harbors, they were used by the pole ships in the post-railway and way time. They were located that all ships were parked with the bow upstream. Our modern vessels, however, they work with pots, so we can maneuver in all directions. Doesn't matter where the current is coming from. But those docking spots, they are already positioned, and the entrance of the ship is not exactly in the middle, but more to the front. So to make the setup for all ships in line fittable, and to have access to the bollers and the infrastructure on the shore side, all ships must be in the same direction, and that is still the old rule, with the bow in the direction of the mountain. There are places where we don't use that, and then we can easily park our vessel sidewards, and then we have the current from the back.
I've got two questions which are in the same direction. One from Geraldine from Lake Dallas, and Geraldine is asking here, what is the draft of a longship?
It is 5 till 6 feet, depending if we have ballast or not, fuel and water. So the lightest we can get a longship is around 1.55 meters, and then we have enough fresh water and fuel, enough fresh water for 1.5 days, and fuel for 4, 5, 6 days. Then you have to be aware that in your next port there is a water connection, but for the worst case we have also a fresh water maker on board of our vessels.
And Robert is coming back one more time to the question of the river itself, on the flow of the river, and he's asking here, when we talk about the river itself, the flow of the river, is that controlled in one or another way, by lock or by something else?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. We have natural rivers, and we have rivers where the water level is controlled by locks and dams. That's a bit a long story. Before I completely go a bit longer, most of the locks in Europe, they are there to generate a minimum water level. Some locks and dams are just there to generate electric power, but they are less. So the dam holds the water from going downhill, and then you have a minimum water level. So dry sections, for example, the higher part of the Rhine River and the higher part of the Danube River, when there's not so much melting water, they are controlled by dams to give us a natural or a minimum water way. However, by higher water, this water must go down. So it is somehow controlled, but when there is a lot of rainfall and a lot of water is coming down, then the water is slushed down.
Now, moving a bit into the technical side here, Leroy from Detroit is asking, how many engineers are typically on board a longship during a sort of a 1 week or 2 week voyage?
So we are always 2 engineers on board. It depends, sometimes we have 2 first engineers, and sometimes we have also 1 second engineer, so 1 training engineer and 1 first engineer on board.
And when we talk about these engineers here, there are 2 follow-up questions, one from Joseph and Rayleigh. And Joseph here is saying the engineer on board, he's of course taking care of making sure that the ship is able to sail, but is he or she also taking care of the refurbishment, any refurbishment work that is being taken care of?
So we have maintenance work to do during the season, of course. We have to maintenance our engines, we have to maintenance winches and so on. So we are also taking care of the refurbishment of some technical areas. But of course, public areas like walls or furniture or something like this, we will hand over to the profis.
And that brings me to a similar question from Al from Orlando. And Al is saying here, now you said earlier here that you're sitting here in Cologne, that you're on the Seine. We've also seen in the video that we have harbors where we keep the ships during the winter time. But what do we actually do during the winter time? Well, we make these movies, but of course we're doing some other stuff as well.
Of course, we do everything. So we clean everything up. We maintenance all the units. We do maintenance work, what we cannot do during the season. For example, we open the whole wastewater treat management system, clean all the tanks and so on. So we have a lot of stuff to do during the winter months.
Good, and I'm going to bounce back now to the navigational setup. I've got here a question from Carol and Bill, saying the step up in brackets here from the States here, and they're saying here, we love the Rhine and the Danube trips. They are superb and recommended to all. Thank you for that comment. When we sail from one city to another city or another destination, The question is here about the sailing plan. Now, how strict is that sailing plan? Is it that you have to stick to it minute by minute? Is there a law or something that keeps you to that sailing plan? Or you can just say, I'm going to sail very fast now, and then I'm going to take it easy for the rest of the ride there? What is the sort of the setup there?
Now we have a few values that you have to fill in. First of all, you have to enter a city on time, because there's an excursion planned and our docking spot is planned. But this plan is made already in advance, and between the two cities is always enough time to think from an environmental and also a safe view. So first of all, we have to drive safe, and next to this, we like to make our ship environmental. So there is enough time in our itineraries to get from one city to another city. Sometimes there are delays by locks, or when you have more busy locks with more chamber, that one of the chamber is out of order, two by whatever, and then you can have some waiting time, and then we have to speed it up a little bit to get on time. But once again, safety comes first.
And on this note here, I've got a question from Bernard from Iowa and from Robert here. And the first question is from Bernard. He's saying here, what is the work schedule of a captain like? Work schedule less than the time focused on you on board, but generally, how much time do you spend with your family? How much time do you spend on board? And as a follow-up here, I got the question here, do you actually change captains during a cruise, or when is the swap over here? That's what Robert is asking.
Actually, the maritime industry has not a good reputation, but it is pretty good, because I have 6 months holiday every year, and that is pretty normal in the nautical industry. It's also for the engineers and also offshore ocean ships. So the same amount of time what we work, we can spend at home by our families. And most captains fill that in with a 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off system, or a 4 weeks on, 4 weeks off system. Yeah, on the vessel, we work with 3 navigators, and we rotate. So we work 4 hours on, 8 hours off, 6 hours on, 6 hours off. As a captain, you have more to do than only navigating. We have to make inspection rounds, we have to chat with our guests, many things to do. So, but there is enough time to do so.
And I think this also answers the question from Linda, who has been asking about the working hours. I think you have answered that one. Thank you, Linda, for asking this. I've got here a question now from Terry from Alexandria, and I love that question. Yeah? That question, Terry, is, are there good starry night skies when you sail on the Rhine River?
Yes, they are. They are. You need, of course, a little bit luck with everything. I had a hotel manager, and he was pretty into the stars and astrology. So he was, as a captain, I should know a lot, but he knows a little bit more than me. And there are some night views.
Super. Now we're going to move over a little bit to safety. So there are a couple of questions around safety and the safety setup. And Tino, I think I'm going to bounce them to you here. So the first question which we're going to have on safety is the general setup in terms of, do we have life rafts on board, or how does that actually work?
So all the guests have life jackets in their cabins, and we have also a rescue boat on our vessel. In case of an emergency, for example, we have a leakage or something like this, we are always able to reach the shore side, so it's not necessary to evacuate the ship into the water. So it's not necessary for us to have life rafts on board.
Mm-hmm. We have life vests, right?
We have life vests, and this is enough for us, because we are always, shore is always near, and we can stop the ship on shore, and this is no problem. Okay.
So you're never far from the shore side here, right? And here Linda is also going into the safety side here a bit, and she's asking here, in the video that we have seen early on, there was a reference where a helicopter was actually sort of dropping a pilot on another ship. This was when we transferred the ships. But she's asking here, is it actually possible to land a helicopter on a Longship?
Yes, that happens sometimes, yeah. Mm-hmm. Very rare. And we have to clear the sun deck. We have to make all the chairs away. By accidents in Germany, you get instead of an ambulance, you can get the trauma chopper, It is a helicopter ambulance, and he's able to land on the deck. We even have a learning protocol for that, how to deal with this. This is all nautical crew and all hotel crew have to fulfill in the beginning of the season start. So it's possible.
So a possibility for the helicopter as such. I want to stay with you for a moment here one more time in terms of the staterooms themselves. And the question here about the staterooms, we've learned that there's a different setup and that makes them bigger as such. But the question here is not about the size itself. The question here is about generally the ambience and possible noise as such, right? So the question is here, is there a difference in noise during the day or during the night in the staterooms, or are they completely soundproof? How can we feel about this one?
Yeah, Viking invests a lot to make those ships to reduce all vibrations and sounds. The hybrid system our engineer was talking about is the opposite from a big engine in the middle of the ship, choom, choom, choom engine. Our diesel engines, our diesel generators, they are built far away from the guest areas, especially the staterooms, far in the front and far in aft. Everything is isolated. So it doesn't matter a lot which stateroom you buy or rent. Generally, the whole ship is quiet and vibrationless.
Thank you, as we can expect on a ship. When it comes to again, the sourcing here, we talked about sailing during the night, sailing during the day as well, docking in the cities. The question is here about sourcing food as such. So the question is, when is the food being sourced? How does that come on board? Because that's not very often seen by guests, and that's asked by Melissa from Griffin, which is specifically referencing on when the food comes on board, and is this local food that comes on board?
Yes, it is local food. Viking is cooking a lot local dishes. The food is not coming from, no, it's the same food that you have in the supermarket, so it can come from everywhere, but we work with local companies. And when you book a cruise with us, you can see, we call it a loading, so a distribution of food, but most of the time we do that in ports and during the excursions of the guests. It's on a regular basis, like once a week. The vegetables and the fruit comes a bit more often. Sometimes you have a big one every 40 days, depends on the area we're working. Most of the time we have a supply of every week of fresh food. And it is on one big truck full with beverage and food and other stuff what the crew is carrying into the vessel.
Thank you. I want to reference here, there are a lot of videos and information sessions on Viking.TV as well that actually reference the type of food that we have on board the ocean ships and as well the river ships. But as you said as well, the food is being brought on board whilst our guests are on an excursion, and that's why you are mostly not seeing it when it's being delivered as such. From the food section, I'm going to come back one more time to the technical setup here. And that's one of the last questions that we have here in the round here. And that question is from Charles from Claremont. And Charles is asking here about the air condition. Charles is saying here, I love Viking river and ocean cruises, and I'm impatiently waiting for the ships to start sailing. But he would really like to know the cooling, how's the cooling generated as well? How does that actually work here on the river ships?
Yeah, Charles, very good question. We have a carrier system on board which is producing chilled water. So we have two compressors which compress gas and which cools down seawater. With this cooled down seawater, we cool down our chilled water. We have 6 AC units over the whole ship, each unit for one area, and so you can be sure that the whole ship will be cool when you come on board.
And this closes most of our questions here. I want to reference here a few questions that have come up, and I would like to take you back here to Viking.TV and to our website. There are some of the questions that are around the procedures that we have on board once we start sailing again. And here would like to reference our website. If you go on vikingcruises.com, our procedures are all lined up there, and they're very detailed there. Further on, we've got some questions around the food, and here we said already, when it comes to the food on board the ship, there are sessions that are being run on Viking.TV that references this particular area. I also would like to come back here to some of the questions which look at specifically your itinerary. When it comes to the individual itineraries, the question is here, and I'm actually going to bring this up here. One question is, what is your favorite itinerary? That's a difficult one. And the second one is here is, which one is your favorite ship, right? And I'm going to ask this only to Johan here as our captain, right?
Yeah, those are very good questions. What is my favorite stretch? Actually, on the moment I'm sailing Amsterdam-Budapest, and I like to do the Amsterdam Grand European. That means all the way to the Black Sea one day. Did already a few times in the past, because then I cover the Rhine River, the Main River, and the Danube River. Previous years I was sailing also on the Mosel. All rivers have the beautiness. The Rhine River, the Mosel River, the Main River, the Danube. Everywhere are nice spots. For me personally, when I stay 5 years on one stretch, then I like to change and see something else. That is nice from this company, because they have ships everywhere, so I can cruise everywhere.
And on this note, I would like to hand back to James, who has been working on the technical setup. And James, I think we're going to switch back to Karina. And Karina is going to wrap up that session today with a short run through our Longships as well, and some of the best spots and pictures on one of our Longships. Thank you very much for joining, and I'm handing over to Karina.
The Viking Longships are the way to explore Europe, sailing the continent's tranquil and historic waterways.
It's a beautiful day along the river, and we'd like to take the opportunity to show you around one of our Longships.
The Viking Lounge is light and airy, a natural gathering place for new friends, for entertainment and for lectures. Architecturally,
the bar has actually been clinker built, which is very similar in style to the way the Vikings built their Longships in their day. And you love these floor-to-ceiling wraparound windows. They're taller than me, even when I'm on heels.
Just off the light-filled reception area is the spacious, well-stocked library.
We have free Wi-Fi on all our ships, but should you choose to leave your computers behind, you're of course welcome to use our laptops here in the internet corner of the library.
Up top, ever-changing views are just one part of this vast deck. These ships are a marvel of technology, with ecologically friendly hybrid engines for smooth sailing.
We even have solar panels lining both sides of our Longships. And we have an herb garden, so that when our great chef runs out in the kitchen, he can come upstairs and that's right, and pick your own fresh herbs.
The dining room is spacious and inviting, with complimentary wine served at both lunch and dinner.
As on all our Viking ships, we have open seating dining, and this means that you can sit with whomever you want, whenever you want, and you can change that every day if you like. And though the food is exquisite, the dress code is rather casual and relaxed. You can leave all your fancy frocks at home.
Or you can dine amid spectacular views on the Aquavit Terrace.
This is my favourite part of the ship. On a sunny day like today, the Aquavit Terrace is the perfect place for a spot of lunch.
The skylight-capped area also doubles as an inviting sunroom.
This is a quiet hideaway you don't want to miss.
And when it's time to rest your head at night, there are plenty of delightful options, many with private verandas, plus the ultimate in river cruise accommodations.
We have 2 Explorer Suites on our Longship series, and it can't get very much better than this.
Come experience the Viking Longships for yourself and discover why they're the most talked about ships in Europe.